Britain is one of only 4 countries that currently spends 2% of its GDP on defence, but others will now do more. With today's Wales pledge, every NATO member not spending 2% will halt any decline in defence spending, and they will aim to increase it in real terms as GDP grows and to move towards 2% within a decade.
Well, for the last decade, NATO has had a target for its member states to spend 2% of their total national income on defence. But ever since it started, really after the 9/11 attacks and the mobilisation of American resources at that time, for that whole period, very few European countries have met the target. But one of the countries that has consistently met that target is the UK. Having met the 2% target ever since it was started, the UK is about to fall below it. Not because the defence budget is going to fall, though it might do, but simply because our national income is growing. And therefore, unless there are significant increases in defence spending every year, then we will fall further and further below the 2% target, even in current government plans, which suggest some small real terms increase. So the reason it's an issue is because the UK is no longer going to be meeting the 2% target from next year. What matters in terms of British defence capabilities is whether they have the money to meet the plans that they have. And that people may think they should have, providing the MOD gets some real terms increase in its budget over the next 4 years, it can meet the current plans which were agreed back in 2010, it can bring back the MPA and the carriers, it can maintain personnel numbers more or less where they are now, depending on the assumptions you make. But 2% is not necessary for current plans, but it would give the UK extra resources. NATO, if we met the 2% target, we would have about another $6 billion a year to play with by 2020, which are not in current plans. So that would buy you quite a lot of extra capability. But I think there's another dimension to the 2%, which is the international reputation aspect. Quite apart from the impact on our own capabilities, the Prime Minister promised to the rest of NATO, to President Obama most of all, only last September in Wales at the NATO summit, that the UK would be committed to this target. And now we're faced with a situation in which none of the major parties seem willing to commit to maintaining that promise that was made last year. And I think that's going to be difficult to handle in relations between the UK and the US. Even though other NATO countries already have fallen below 2%, the fact that Prime Minister Cameron made such a play of making that commitment to Obama, I think will create, at the very least, a significant degree of awkwardness in the relationship. In terms of any potential single party or coalition that comes to power after the election, nobody's going to meet the 2% target because the extra money involved would just be so significant. I suppose the only scenario in which the 2% would be more likely to be met would be one in which the economy stopped growing or went into recession, in which case it'd be easier to meet the 2%, not because more was being spent on defence, but because our economy was shrinking. I hope we don't get into that particular explanation, because then that would, of course, open up the whole issue of austerity more generally.